Welcome to Scotch Money, where it's me, Dimitri. We have Brian, we have Hunter, and we're going to tell you about things that we know while drinking scotch. Cheers.
Cheers.
So good. All right. Well, today we're going to be talking about regional recessions and how those impact the politics, how those impact the investing, and how we can all take advantage of those micro recessions as they happen. So let's talk about that. Hunter, you and I were talking about that yesterday. Do you want to jump into some of your thoughts on regional recessions, and then we'll jump to Brian, and then I'll give my 2 cents.
First, let's define the term.
Okay. Well, you want me to define the term?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay. So the way that I see a regional recession is when you're looking at micro markets. So as opposed to like the United States as a whole, if you're looking at California, or if you're looking at New York, or if you're looking at, in the case that I'm very familiar with, Massachusetts or Michigan or Pennsylvania, markets that are regionally in a recession when the rest of the market as a whole is doing very well, maybe even bubble, right? So it's regional dips in the market. That's how I define it. Do you guys have anything that you would add to what we could call a regional recession?
No.
It's interesting because, you see all kind of stuff in the real estate game. For instance, there's a suburban improvement district, which is approximately, 3,000 people. And they have a market specific to them. Keep in mind, they only cover 5,000 acres, but that's some mileage. Like it's a decent sized community, and they're closely connected with another city that's about 3,000 as well.
But which city are you talking about?
They're the two biggest. What's that?
What city are you talking about?
I'm talking about I'm talking about a city and a suburban improvement district. Both of them are in Arkansas, and the rest of the state has been, that's what's interesting. It's like when you talk about regional and you think about it from a U.S. perspective, there's things like the Rust Belt or the Bible Belt or like Pacific Coast. Like these are like large regions, and they can have recessions. Recessions can be something as big as that. Like we're involved in deals that are directly in the Rust Belt. But there can also be micro versions of that as well, which is interesting. So like within the state of Arkansas, you have I think it's the number 3 fastest growing community in the country. And it happens to be, hey, less than 30 miles away from the 2 communities I previously mentioned. But while it's growing 3rd fastest in the country, this area has been receding for years and years and years. And it's just based on poor demographic dispersion. It's got a lot of retirement people, and it's got a lot of young artists, respectively. One community is full of one community is full of the other. They're practically the same city, but it makes it to where the whole region is missing the workhorse of America, which is men and women 30 to 50. You know what I'm saying? Like that, the industry, the executive level, it's just missing that. You got a bunch of kids making art and doing cool, great things, but you got a lot of people retired as well. Like we need all the people in the middle to join the fun, or else there's an issue. So I've even seen, quote, regional recessions as small as like a couple cities within a state, or a county within other counties, like a district. Like it's interesting how you can see micro and macro, versions of it, but it exists in so many forms.
Interesting point. I remember a few years ago, a friend of mine or an acquaintance of mine had told me about how he was investing in Michigan. Well, but it was in Detroit. And this is back like 2013, 14, maybe. And he was saying how, and he was very, at that time, mind you, he was doing residential, like fix and flips. And he was telling me at that time how you have to really understand the market, because at that time in Detroit, you could buy up entire streets of real estate. But if you buy one street, it's a great deal. If you buy the street right next to it, that's like a gang infested street. So you don't go to that street. So, I mean, like,
block for block
silly,
basis over there.
But then, as we know, well, how is it that people get rid of squatters from those houses, Brian?
Oh my goodness.
No.
Jeez. I tell you, it's funny because the regional recession, if it's once it gets down to block by block, is that a region anymore? Like what? It's just a street, or is it a block? Like at what point does it become a region?
I still
That's
want.
a very interesting.
I feel like Brian should tell this story about getting rid of squatters, because honestly, like that.
No, don't scar people mentally, emotionally. Hearing the story, I wrestled with it for like 2 days trying to not think about it. Like how horrible.
And that's why I think people would want to hear it. Whatever. Okay. If people want to hear it, they can message us. And we'll tell it to them individually.
Yeah,
it's messed up.
Perfect call to engagement.
Okay.
Perfect. If you would like to hear the story about the Philippines squatter evacuation, then yes, please comment.
I'll take this one. I'll leave it on this one note. Things are done differently in other countries, and they are messed up. Okay. All right, let's get back on topic. So, all right. So here's my question to you guys. There are, and so we'll go, let's say Brian and then Hunter, and to answer this question, because I really want to know your guys' opinion. So let's say you have one situation where it's a declining economy, as in this town or region, however you define region, and you can define it in your own argument. It's in a decline and it's just going to crap, as in it's not good to invest your money into. That's all clear and defined. The other circumstance is a dip, but there will be a recovery. How can you tell the difference, or what advice can we give on an individual basis to someone who wants to be able to know, well, how do I tell the difference between an economy that's just going to crap and I shouldn't invest in that, or hey, there's a really good opportunity here? Brian. You had mentioned stuff in Japan. Did that apply to what we're talking about here?
It does apply in a very small sense. There are areas in Japan where people normally wouldn't invest in because the houses are small. They wouldn't want to live in them. They are far away from the train station, but they are in Tokyo. And because they're in Tokyo and because the Olympics they were going to come up in 8 years, it made sense to invest in anything in Tokyo. The ROIs were pretty high, and the numbers made sense. So even though the location itself wasn't somewhere where I would have wanted to live or would have thought that anybody would want to live, the numbers told us a different story. And I think it is important to have the facts, to contextualize the situation, because the recession on its own, the regional recession on its own, is a scary event. But in the context of that, the upcoming Olympics, of Tokyo continuously expanding into its suburbs, it made sense. The industrial property we purchased over in Massachusetts is the only other uh, area I've had experience in the on this topic, where you have an industrial building that on an industry that was in decline, and if we purchased that property 5-10 years ago, it would have been a bad deal. It's only in the context of what's happening now, where you have warehouses that are being built everywhere and data centers that are being built everywhere that require large spaces, and cannabis facilities that are also require large spaces. That all of these things make money, and all of these things are expanding, where these buildings can now be repurposed. But just a few years ago, it would have been a bad deal. So, we have to contextualize the time event. What's the industry currently doing? Do we have a creative use for this asset?
Is there a tenant?
Yeah.
Is it just going to sit there vacant, or is there someone who's actually going to use it?
Yeah, at least specifically in real estate. But it's not just about real estate, right? It's also about what if it's a different asset class?
Is real estate. I'm just kidding. Go on.
The story is the same. Even if you're looking at tech.
Oh, absolutely.
So you're looking at this company that's failing. Is the whole industry failing? Is there going to be a use for it? Did they find something innovative that they just haven't shared with anybody? Do you see a use for it in the future? You have to be creative and create a story in your mind to see how it works out.
That reminds me of a funny story. Let me share this because it's in the tech space. So, obviously, I'm like, everyone's familiar with Facebook, right? Duh. So when Facebook was going out for its initial funding, Mark Zuckerberg, I think they approached the Google guys, but I may be remembering wrong. But they approached some big investors, and hey, we're all getting the same messages. Okay. So they approached the Google guys and said, "Hey, we're looking for funding for our social media platform." And remember, social media is a huge thing now. Back then, not so much. But what they were told is, "What? You guys are trying to start a social media platform? Haven't you heard of Friendster? Time's gone, man." And so it's like, how it's an interesting thing, because I think this is a really fundamental, regardless of whether it's real estate or stock or preferred stock, so tech companies, private stock. How do you define a good opportunity? Well, in that case, looking back on it, we can say, okay, well, Friendster and MySpace, which were huge. Do you remember MySpace, guys? I loved MySpace. I'm not really a huge fan of Facebook.
Until it got overrun with musicians trying to force you to listen to stuff.
That's why I liked it.
They need to come out with another one where that is the game. It's just musicians. It's all about music, and they're all like, "Hey, listen to my stuff, check my stuff out, like my stuff."
And then it didn't work.
I think they did. I think it's called SoundCloud.
Well, there's SoundCloud, but then also MySpace itself tried that. It's still around. MySpace still exists.
Just embracing it?
It's just who
the big time. There's a lot of European music-related people still use MySpace.
They're like, "Oh, check out my MySpace, yeah." In any case, the point is, the question is, how do you define good opportunity when there's risk, right? We already talked about risk, but how do you define?
And it's always there.
There's always risk. But how do you, with a good plan in your mind, how do you define a good opportunity? Hunter. How do you tell the difference?
I think the question almost answers itself, uh, because you say, how do you plan uh, to seize an opportunity? I think in coming up with the plan, that's how you assess opportunity. You have to know it's an opportunity to devise a plan around seizing it, and to know if you should plan, you have to assess if it's an opportunity. So planning and assessing opportunity are almost like chicken or egg situation. It's like, well, do I come in with a strategy and then look for opportunities that fit the plan? Or do I look for opportunities and see if I can come up with a plan that makes that for sure an opportunity? I mean, those are two different schools, and there's plenty of attendees in both areas. Um, I feel like it's easier to decide your plan and then seek opportunities that fit, than it is to assess on a as come basis opportunities and then decide if you want to get involved in those, because there's so many opportunities in so many wheelhouses, and if it's not yours, you're at a disadvantage already. You have to learn something about the industry, learn something about the sector, whatever it is. And you don't know what you don't know until you know.
Yeah.
So I don't like to learn lessons the hard way, and I would rather pick a wheelhouse I'm comfortable in, pick pick a region I know well, and then combine those two things to formulate a plan, and then go out looking for opportunities that fit the plan.
What I'm hearing here is that you're picking something that you know already. So you're essentially picking a story that you know and a region that you know, and then you're mixing the two. Because as investors, we don't just it's not just about giving money and then letting them run with it. It's about creating the connection, seeing the connections, and then creating those connections. And I think it's like just going back to the Massachusetts deal that we recently did. The the cannabis story is there. The cannabis tenant was there, and we were familiar enough with them to connect them with this property that was available for industrial use. And if we stuck to the old story, oh, it's a coal mill or a paper mill in an industrial area, and let's just use it for the same thing, then it would have been a bad investment. But we essentially mixed it with a different story, and we changed everything that way, just by introducing, one story to another, created something else.
I'm of the belief, fundamentally, that I Hunter, you and I have known each other a long time, and we're very good friends. I am of the belief that there's give and take, right? You guys know me. I'm a strategy guy. I love strategy. I play chess. I don't play sports. I play chess. It's just what I like. But
This from the man that started syndications during a game of Monopoly. Of course you like strategy, and I love that about you. You're like, let's partner up. I'll give you this much equity. I'll pay you this much off of all my rentals and leases. Next thing you know, the whole game is just turned into syndication battle because everybody at the board was involved in real estate. So it's like, oh, wait a minute. We can put real world rules on this. It's like, okay. It's like I'm fixing to acquire this company right here the hard way. So, but it made it so much fun, and yeah, I can't wait to play again. I never thought I'd look forward to playing Monopoly with
Monopoly.
Anyone, but yeah, you've actually made it something I look forward to doing again.
It makes me think of Brian. Do you remember that time where during Thanksgiving, Chad and I were you, Chad, and his daughter are playing Monopoly, and we're having a couple of drinks, but it's Thanksgiving, and then all of a sudden, like, things are getting really intense, and he's like, "You can't do that." And I'm like, "Where does it say in the rules I can't?" Where does it say in the rules I can't? And he's just like, and I'm like, hey, Brian, I'll give you, you know, we start making a deal. And he's like,
Yeah.
you can't do that. I don't. And then I look at his daughter. I'm like, hey, do you want to make this deal?
I spoke to Chris last night, and he mentioned that
It's
exact thing. It's like, you can't change the rules of Monopoly just
spoke to who?
for purposes.
Wait, you spoke to who?
Chris.
Ah, yes, you can.
Yeah,
Well, it's not
yeah,
the
'cause you
rule.
did that exact same thing to Chris during Memorial Day.
He got so pissed. But I always win.
No, that's the thing though. That's what's amazing about it. Okay, Monopoly is viewed as a me versus everybody game. For most people, for everyone I've ever known, it's a me versus everybody game. And sadly enough, it's very analogous for life when you involve money. The money game is usually, a lot of people look at it as me versus everybody else. Like, how do I get the most for me? And it's a very good analogy as well, how when you don't look at it as a me versus everyone, you look at it as, who could I combine with, who could I, you know, complement, or we could work together to make this into something that would be even better. And you always come out on top, just like you just said. But I feel like the reason you always come out on top is because you're not in it for like, hey, look, it's all about me against everyone else. It's like,
Yeah,
I want this
thing.
you know, victory for myself, but I'm going to think outside the box, any way, any possible strategy, you know, that I can do to make that happen. And I'm going to be open to collaboration along the way if that's what it takes. And I think that what makes for a great business person as well. And that's what's interesting about the question, you know, how do you plan or find or determine opportunity when you have a brain like yours or mine or Brian's, or like when you have a good head on your shoulders, we can pretty much create opportunity. I can make anything an opportunity. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's already cool, I can make it awesome. If it's already awesome, I can make it the shit, you know, like same way with something that's in a bad place. It's like you were talking about, an old mill, just like what we're doing up in Fitchburg. If I looked at that and said, "Ooh, old grain mill," I wouldn't think, well, no opportunity there because nobody wants a grain mill anymore. I'm thinking of what else can go in that building, what fits that footprint, what can utilize the ceiling height, what is, you know, something that the ancillary services to other businesses that are thriving in the area. How do I position it for that? Who do I know in that area? The networks start coming in and building. I'm telling you, anything can be made into an opportunity with the right perspective.
So that takes me to what I was talking about just a moment ago. You guys can still hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I feel like my microphone's buzzing a little bit. All right. So
to me, you're quieter than Brian by a good bit, though.
Is this better? If I go like, is this deeper? Is this softer? Is this better? Right here.
Yeah, this is better.
Okay. So here's the thing. It's okay. It's very rare that I'm quieter than Brian. Maybe it's a good thing. So when I think of a deal, and if I try to think of what makes a deal into a deal, right? Because anything can be a deal. If I said to you guys, hey, do you guys want to buy this piano? Let's start making a deal, right? But you guys don't need a piano. So I'm talking about what makes a deal that you can see, that we all see hundreds, thousands of deals all the time. What makes that into the deal that we do? It's a combination.
I think that actually gets this. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, no.
I think there's a delay. Sorry, my bad.
No. It's okay. Just I have a really quick point to make about it. In my opinion, it's about structure, as in you make a plan. If you're going into it blind, you're going to get hit with too many unknowns, right? And then you're going to die under the pressure of the deal. Like, it's like instead of making a rocket ship to go into space, it's like, just let's get into a hot air balloon and go up to space. Well, there's no air up in space, so you're going to die. So using that analogy for real life, you got to have a plan. However, once you get up there, once you get into the thick of the deal, no matter who you are, no matter how great your planning is, no matter what, business is business. you're going to get into something that you don't expect. It's an unknown unknown. And in order to get through it, you have to have a good structure, which you guys know, I've talked about that so many times. And on top of having a good structure, you need to have a plan B and C. And then on top of that, you need to be able to adapt without letting yourself freak out. The reason the three of us, the three of us get along so well is because we adapt. When stressful situations come up, which c'est la vie, they come up all the time, we simply roll with the punches. We say, okay, well, here's what's happening. What do we need to do? All right, let's do that. We have a team. And fundamentally, we understand that it's better to get something done well than it is to try to make it perfect. As in, something done is better than nothing done, right? The final point that I'll make there is, what is thinking? And we can go into wherever you guys want to go, whether it's what I was just saying or this next point. But here's the difference between an intelligent thinker and someone who's just, average thinking. And I actually heard this recently. I think you guys will really appreciate it. An average thinker will put their thoughts down on paper or into a conversation, and they're just spewing it. So it's mind thinks of something and they're saying it. But a thinker, someone who's a person who's structuring, someone who's thinking, is this a good idea, is going to think about that thought and say, well, what could go wrong? And then you put together the network of strategy.
No.
The network of love. The network of strategy is a matter of thinking. When I'm playing chess, I'm not just moving. I'm thinking, if I make this move, will it go wrong? How can it go wrong? But I still make a move, and I make it in a timely manner because we have to get to the end of the game, and I have to learn, and I don't know everything. But with collaboration, proper structure, and thinking mixed with good acting, as in moving forward, that's how good deals are made. Adapting.
Yeah, but you put in important notes on there on what exactly it takes to be able to be adaptive, because it's all about being comfortable with the discomfort of making those mistakes. With you can go what if and jump into it, but to be able to go what if, you have to feel like it's not a threat. So you have we have to develop the built-in resiliency of, going, is this really a threat or not? Well, I'm not going to be killed by this, so it's probably not a threat. So it's
everything's a threat.
Experiment with,
right?
But also, you also have to think about the safety net. I mean, your structure is the safety net. It's what you've put in place to make sure that the worst doesn't happen. So you pick the worst possible scenario, you defend against that, so that you no longer have to worry about the worst possible scenario. And then you have the peace of mind to go what if and to experiment. That way you don't have to continually think about what if the worst happens. You just have to think about all of the other things on top of that.
Yeah.
So for example, on chess, your structure is the board. You don't have to think about anything that goes on outside of the board. You don't have to worry about, what if I make this move and the guy gets pissed off and punches me in the face? That's not even in the thought process, well, because
I don't know what kind of chess you've been playing. Sounds like a good time.
But essentially it's built into the game, where you don't worry about those things.
The structure. And we as investors can build in our own structure. That's the beauty of it. You build the structure, you build your own board so that when it's time to play your pieces, you know the rules. So, like all equity ownership, right? Not taking debt. You know that the bank can't punch you in the face, right? Because there's no bank. So you define. I really like that because you're defining the basics and then you're playing by your own rules within the basics.
Yeah, because you can't be open without boundaries. It's I mean it's kind of weird to say it that way, but the only way you can be comfortable being open and experimental is to place where to define where the boundaries are.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. Um, there's some good relationship advice from Brian.
Oh shit. I guess it does work that way.
Yeah, I think it works in every way. And that's the funny part. Life is complicated, and yet the things that we do in life are very repetitive, they're similar, there are patterns. And so you build your foundation, which a healthy, strong foundation will lead to a healthy project or relationship. Or healthy relationship will lead to healthy actions together. And I'm not talking about just a relationship with a significant other. I'm talking about with friends, with business partners, with investors, with anything. So I'm a firm believer in that. It's kind of this. We have to be able to adapt, but you set yourself up for success, and then you make actions, and you win some, you lose some, but you're gonna win more than you're gonna lose if you set yourself up right. And there's always gonna be haters, by the way. Haters gonna hate. Hate. The play a haters ball. Now we're gonna get sued by Dave Chappelle. Great. Well, let me bring it on back into what we were talking about. How does this apply to recessions? I was gonna tell a story, so I will tell a story about when I first got into real estate in Vegas. So, I mean, I always lived here in California, except for that time that I lived in Vegas for that period of time because of taxes. No, I'm just kidding. But when we were doing deals in Vegas, I remember this was 2000, like originally, the original few deals, 2008, 9, 10, 11, during the crash. I remember everybody was telling us, why are you doing deals in Vegas? Vegas has gone to crap, and it's fallen the most out of any other market in the US. And the way I looked at it was, okay, well, it's fallen. It's a recession all around, which we know is going to recover unless the United States ceases to exist, which, surprise, surprise, it didn't. But if we're buying things, and as we all, I think anybody who hears this is going to agree that recessions are the best time to buy if you have money, right? The downtime. So where do you buy? Well, you buy
depending on your timeline. That's the thing. It's all about your plan and your structure.
It depends on your
because
time,
it could take so long to recover. That could be good for you if you want a long play, but not if you're looking to turn the money in 3 to 5.
Well, and so that there's I can get into that, but in general, when times are tough, it's the best time to buy if you have the money to do so. And you should be responsible with your own personal finances. And I guess we can talk about that in a whole, that's a whole nother episode. But what I'm trying to say is, people were saying, hey, you're crazy for investing in Vegas in 2011 when that was the best time. Why? Because what happened was the market was at the low point. And the one question, besides structure, besides all that stuff, was, is Vegas going to cease to exist, or is it going to recover? Is it going to open up? And it did. And so there's a lot of money to be made. Then you start going into the question of, okay, well, do you go into the residential sector? Do you go into industrial? Do you go into commercial, retail? That's a whole other story. And, we placed bets on and many different things. And in this particular case, industrial did way better than anything else in the cycle. But that's not to say other things didn't do well as well. So you can't always be right. But I will say this, we didn't lose any money. And we made money on what we made. So, and mind you, I was extremely young, a younger man than I am now even. And we did really well because there was a fundamental structure that worked. And we're investing in a time, like right now, I would never invest in Vegas now because the time has come and gone. It's expensive. It's surpassed previous market highs. And I feel the same way about California. And I still have people telling me, Dimitri, oh, I'm investing in California and I'm doing well. And I'm like, okay, cool. But I don't trust it because look at the value. There's no value.
It depends on how long your play is. Because if your play is cash out in a few months, then you might be able to ride, the volatility of the financial market here in California. But if if you want to cash out big in a few years, that's a different comfort level because, you have to be comfortable projecting a few years in advance. It's not just the monetary comfort of can I afford to, hold money into this asset for a few years. It's also the emotional comfort of, I'm making a decision that will affect my life 5 years from now.
Yeah.
So it's that uncertainty. So, do you have the gumption to go ahead and make that bet?
Gotta have chutzpah. What do you think about this, Hunter?
I mean, I feel like we're just defining regional recession. I feel like has become something of an opportunity deal making expedition our class. Through the course of the conversation, I've just been keeping notes a little bit, and that's why I look down. When you see me look down over here, I'm keeping notes of things that we've talked about, and it's interesting when you look at the things we've talked about: defining the region, combining knowledge, being open to collaboration, assessing the risk, making a plan to mitigate the risk, which yields a structure, seeking opportunity, aligning values, and making a deal. Those things all go into the story of how to create success, because if you define your region, first of all, if you just pick an area, okay, what's an area? Pick an area, define your region. Are we talking with, about a state, about a county, about a city? And that goes to your comfort level. What are you comfortable with? That needs to be your region. Whatever region you choose to do business in needs to be a region that you are comfortable in. Either you've lived there for years, you grew up there, or something. But if you don't know the field, it's hard to play the game. So
now, hold on.
The first thing I feel like,
please.
So the first thing I feel like is defining an actual region. And once you define the region where you're comfortable, you think about, who else is in this area with a similar mindset or that has knowledge in the specific area that I have the most comfort. And then you combine that knowledge. Then you try to come up with, like the risk assessment of the area. Like, is the area going down? Is there anything about it going up? Is there anything going sideways? Like, where do I think it's going to be in 5 or 10 years? Like, you just really have to, assess the possible pitfalls of your area. And then once you do that, you plan for handling those risks. You're like, well, there's the potential of this, but we can plan to do this if that happens. And then there's a potential of that, but we can do this if that happens. And once you've done that, you have your plan. That plan is your structure. Now you take that structure and go find opportunities that fit the structure. And when you find an opportunity, hey, this thing, it fits what I'm looking for. It fits my risk tolerance, my timeline, my region, my expertise. Then you just have to align values. I value this thing, here right now, and the other person has to value it at the same price and feel like they're getting an advantage, and you feel like you're getting it at a steal. Like, so that's what leads to opportunity. I feel like in regional recessions is that there's people that feel like they can't weather the length of time it would take to recover, even if they feel like there's a recovery. Some people feel like there'll never be a recovery. We're screwed. It's over. And their value of their asset goes broop. And then if you come along and have the assessment, I feel like there's potential here. All of this is going to recover. My plan and structure involves a 10-year hold. I'm looking to place money for a decade, and this place in a decade I feel is going to be through the roof, and by triple. So I'm willing to pay what this guy feels like is a steal at the bottom, because I know where the top's going to be. And when you have that alignment of a value based on non-alignment of future or plan or structure, that's where the deal is. That's where the deal's made. If it's your plan, if it's your...
I will say this, though. So we talk to a lot of different investors here in, for example, Southern California or in New York or in all of the markets that we have partners in. And we have a lot of partners, been around a long time, right? You know. So in any case.
We're partners. We're all three partners.
We're partners, but I'm saying, yeah, for
people tuning in for the first time, we are all three partners in these same companies. So yes,
we are partners, and we have other partners that we bring in on individual deals, because that's how you make business happen. That being said,
our company has company partners.
We have company partners. There are company partners to our company partners. The company partners
exactly. It's all about
companies that have partnerships.
It's all
kind of a
about the network. Exactly. You
single
can't
family
play Monopoly alone.
Yes. Exactly. Bring the single family offices. In any case, the point is, when we talk, I've talked to so many investors. I don't even know how many investors I've talked to. Thousands, maybe 10,000. I don't know.
Easily.
Some ridiculous amount. Like I would say I talk to at least like 7 people a day. There's 365 days in a year. And yes, I work on holidays, and I've been doing this 10 years. So yeah, I think I could have gotten to like 10,000. I don't know. Whatever. Merry Christmas. The point is, I've talked to a lot of effing people. And you know what I've heard a lot of that is maybe not intuitive, but maybe a little, it's non-sophisticated or new investors, people who don't really know what they're doing, but they're kind of trying to get into it, which is a good thing. Like, that's smart of them to do. And I always recommend to them, look, take your time, learn, because a lot of people say, well, I've defined my region to be, let's say they live in Pasadena, California. And they say, well, I'm only going to invest in Pasadena. Well, dude, there's no opportunity in Pasadena right now. It's gone. Like, if you're buying something in Pasadena right now, that we're going to get haters saying, oh, that's not true. I've invested in Pasadena. I made a lot of money. All right, cool. But if you talk to anybody here in the operator community, which includes us and other folks that I won't even mention, but everybody knows, the big operators of California, they're all saying, yeah, I mean, unless you have an in for a very unique deal that maybe one of the big, like, if you and Donald Bren are buddies, Donald Bren from Irvine Company, if you and Donald Bren are buddies and he's like, hey, I got this deal, maybe. But he's not going to do that because Donald Bren does not share. The point is, if you're a regular average Joe and you're like, I have maybe $1 million or 500,000 or even worse, like 100,000 that you're looking to put into some real estate, you're not going to find any good opportunity here in California. Just yesterday, I had a friend of mine say, hey, Dimitri, I have a friend who has 25,000. Can he put it into, this deal that we were investing in? And I'm like, no, sorry, dude. Like, he should put that into his bank and save it because it's 25,000. Nobody sophisticated is operating on that low of a number. But what I'm saying is, let's take ourselves out of it because, we're unique people in the sense that, we have to remember that not everybody has the same levels of capital. And there are folks that have way more capital than we do even, right? So let's put ourselves into a lower level of starting, maybe where we were 10 years ago, and say, okay, if I have, let's say like this guy, 25,000 that I'm looking to invest, well, where do I start? Well, you're not going to make, maybe if this was 2011 in California, okay, you can find something, but today you can't. So where do you go? Okay, there are other markets, secondary or tertiary markets, that you can look at, places that have regional recessions. I keep hitting this thing. Look, regional recessions, we're back on it. Regional recessions to me means there's a decline, but if it's a place that will recover, then there's going to be an upside. So if you know that you're in that bottom part, then you can recover to the top. What defines a region that is just in a regional recession and not in a downhill slope? It's a U, not a slope. Well, to me, I think that that's defined by, for example, places with universities, university towns. There's a university there. People are going to continue to funnel in and out. There's a cycle. It's not just retirees or artists like those places that Hunter was talking about a moment ago. There's students, there's older folks, there's people that are of the working age. It's, let's say, a suburb of a major city, and it's got a university. So when we invested in Fitchburg, and we continue to invest in Fitchburg right now, and when we look for things like it. So it's actually a really good example. If we're investing in Fitchburg, it's because there's a university there. It's 45 minutes out from Boston, which is a major city. The real estate is cheap because the coal industry and the paper industry have gone zippity doo dah. Boom! Now we're gonna get sued by Disney. But profits aren't gonna go zippity doo dah. They're gonna go zippity a. My oh my! What a wonderful day. The point is, there's reasons, macroeconomic reasons, not micro, macroeconomic reasons, not micro. Okay, I'm getting to the point. Macroeconomic reasons for going into a region. Then there are micro economic reasons for investing in a particular building. If you have, for example, a micro reason would be, well, we have an operator who's in the cannabis space, or I happen to know, a guy from Amazon and they're looking for warehouse space, or I happen to have a startup that is looking for space and they have a lot of funding and they're looking for an industrial warehouse. I can make that happen. So you have to be able to see opportunity, and then you have your strategy, and then you go, this connects to this, and this connects to this. But if you're talking about a general strategy of recessions, buying at the bottom, that's a macroeconomic topic. And there's a lot of opportunity there. And I've seen it throughout my entire business career. Rant over. macro, micro.
It's funny. I was reaching over to type because I was curious about the technical definition of opportunity, because it's interesting how it's taking shape just throughout this conversation. It basically boils down to exactly what the definition is, which is crazy. An opportunity is just a set of circumstances that makes it possible to do something.
Yeah.
That's all it is. That's all an opportunity is. It's just a set of circumstances that makes it possible to do something. So if you have a plan and you're taking action, that means you're trying to do something. So you define your region and your risk. That's your circumstance. You define your circumstance, and then you make something happen. That's an opportunity. And that's why I feel like opportunities aren't found, they're created. They're created by the way you think and what you know and who you know. So I think that's a very good point for anybody out there listening, trying to get into real estate, is keep in mind, like, opportunity is something you make. It's not
There's
like a
nothing
four-leaf clover.
particularly. Oh, sorry. There's nothing particularly special about what we do. We're not. I mean, yes, we're smart, and but there are a lot of smart people, and there are a lot of people a lot smarter than us. And it's not about it's not about that. It's about defining what you want to worry about, defining because everything that we've talked about here essentially just narrows down the scope of what it is we have to think about. Why are we able to think about creative solutions? Like, oh, there's a school here, so it's going to grow here. Why are we able to make those bets? Because one, we've set ourselves up for success. So we've had conversations with people, and we have context from those conversations. So we have relationships. Oh, I remember this guy who needs this thing that this other place provides. So that's one way to set up for success. But another way to set up for success is what we keep on repeating: the structure, because the structure, essentially bounds the whole thing. I don't want to have to worry about all of these other things. I just want to worry about these things. So, our brains aren't special in that they process a lot more, a lot more information than anybody else. Like, there aren't more scary things that we handle every single day. They're probably less. We've probably worked really, really hard to make sure that there aren't a lot of scary things, like hiding in the closet, because one, we don't have to worry about losing all of our money because the structure prevents us from doing that. We don't have to worry about, what else don't we have to worry about?
we don't have to worry about, so there are many things that we do have to worry about, but it depends on how you define worry. And it takes me, at least, back to what I was saying earlier, which is, look, there are two things that are certain in this life. We're born. That one already happened. So what's the one other thing? We're going to die at some point. And everybody is scared of that second one. And so they tailor their decisions in life based on the fear of that second one. I'm scared of death, so I'm not going to fly in an airplane. Or I'm scared of being broke and then dying, and so I'm not going to invest in something particular, or I'm not going to take certain risks. It's smart to a certain degree, but what makes us different is we're not the smartest people in the world. We're not. There are smarter people than us. In fact, Michael Leviton, who works for us, is smarter than me, way smarter. Like, he got his master's degree at 17. Like, way smarter. But it's not always about just raw intelligence. You have to have a certain degree of intelligence. And then from that point, it's a matter of, well, how are you making decisions? your decision-making ability and your ability to live with those decisions and adapt should something happen that was unexpected. That's what it's all, that's business. I'll actually tell you guys a story about that. I'm not going to name any names because I don't know if they're cool with it. But a friend of mine, very successful guy. He's got like 10 jets. And we're buddies. You guys know who I'm talking about. He was telling me the other day how, so the way that he made all his money, and hundreds of millions of dollars at least. He's not a billionaire and he hates it. In any case, so the way he made hundreds of millions of dollars, he told me he struggled for 15 years in the pawn business, pawning stuff. And then he got into the jewelry business. So maybe like 10 years of struggling in the pawn business. And then he's like, okay, well, you know, there seems to be an opportunity in the
Which
jewelry.
pawn is a kind of weird version of jewelry business.
Well, yeah, so
that's
like
what they sell the majority of it.
Yeah, so it was a
natural segue.
And then he noticed that, oh, the jewelry part of this business is doing more than the, you know, pawning guitars and stuff. So let's cut that out and focus on just this, which is in itself seeing the opportunity. It's being cognizant of what's happening. But that's not what made him hundreds of millions of dollars. You know what made him hundreds of millions of dollars? He was calling around because he was a young guy at that time. He started super young. So he's like maybe like 30 at this time, like really young, relatively speaking. And he's calling around different radio, TV. This was way back in like the 80s. And saying, hey, you know, I want to book spots. And nobody's giving him the time of day because they're like, you're too small and we don't care about you. Like, we don't care to talk about, you know, a couple of commercials here and there. And it's too expensive. And he's like, how do I do this? How can I advertise to grow my business? And then what happened was he stumbled just by happenstance on a guy. And that guy told him, it was at one of the channels. And he said, oh, hey, you know, you're a young guy. I see what you're trying to do. Here's the game. And he told him, here's what you do. And in that particular case, I'll tell you the strategy because it's he's worried about it because it doesn't work anymore because we live in the age of the internet. The point is, he said, look, you buy a lot of the off-prime slots and you do a bunch of advertising on off-prime. And your dollar, each individual dollar that you invest in that will go further than the prime slots. So everybody thinks, oh, well, everybody's watching during the prime time. But it turns out, no, he made hundreds of millions of dollars doing this. And you know what he did? He did that within a couple of months, his business tripled locally. And he was like, oh, I can replicate this in another state and another state and another state. And he's like, okay, sweet. And he opened up a bunch of stores. Within a couple of years, he was balling. Why? Is it because he's the smartest person? No, I know him personally, and I will tell you for a fact, he's not the smartest person I've ever met. And that's not an insult because he is one of the most successful people that I've ever met. He's a great guy, but he's not the smartest. He simply saw an opportunity. He jumped on that opportunity. And then in that opportunity, instead of getting scared and saying, well, what happens if I grow too much? How can I adapt to that? He said, okay, look, I can do this and I can make more money than I know what to do with. And I don't even know how much money I'm going to make, but I see it. I see the opportunity and I'm going to jump on it because I've tested it. And now that it's tested, I see that I can maximize it. And now, you know, we jam and and have a lot of fun. And sometimes he just sent me a text saying, hey, do you want to come out to Texas for a day and then we'll fly back tomorrow? And I'm like, hold on, I'm doing a podcast. The point is, it's seeing opportunity, but also having the internal drive or ability to say, I'm going to do it. That's what it's all about. Opportunity is opportunity, but are you going to seize it?
Seizing it also is a
Yeah.
function of, reducing your fears through structure and
Mhm.
well, through discipline as well, like learning about what you shouldn't be afraid of. Putting yourself in that mindset where I don't need to be worried about this specific thing because it's beyond my control. And, it'll take care of itself because there's already the structure in place that prevents me from having to worry about it. Or I have somebody really smart in my team, so I don't need to worry about this specific detail because I
Delegating
have
is important.
people much, much smarter than me that take away this issue.
Yeah.
Yep. And
Exactly.
it's funny, the exact marketing strategy that he used that did so well for the guy you just spoke of is exactly the reason we're in one of the deals, and in multiple deals actually, right now in Massachusetts, because he took a set amount of money, and instead of having one shot at some eyes and putting all the money in this high dollar place, he went to the lower value place, and then he spread the money around, and then all of those opportunities for people to see him presented themselves. So right now we're dealing with operators that are looking to expand their network. They're looking to have a distribution network that covers the US. So instead of taking this pile of money and saying, hey, let's put all this in this one thing and then fix it and then hope it works, they're taking the money they have and saying, hey, let's lease some properties so that we can take this one chunk of money and spread it around into all these different areas. And that way we have all these chances at, success rather than the one, because we can afford to rent three instead of buy and fix one. We can,
Yeah.
rent three and fix
Well,
them up,
so
have all these opportunities, to
a,
turn
a
on the
common
cash.
a common question that I always get, and it's like I understand why people ask this question, but it's also kind of funny. The question is, why are people leasing instead of buying? And I'm like,
Exactly.
why does
I
anybody
get that
lease instead
all
of
the
buy?
time. It's like, look at the strategy they're implying. Is because they're an intelligent operator. That's why we're partnering with people like that, because we have the same mindset and we see that long ball and it makes sense and our values align. Because right now
Exactly.
it makes sense for them to pay for the lead, and right now it makes sense for us to buy the building.
And
So
and
we all
here's
have
the thing.
value in it.
It's about risk and reward, and then it's about the cost of money. We all know that debt is cheaper than equity. Yeah, that's right. Not all money is equal. Sorry, I'm gonna
Yeah.
trigger. I'm gonna trigger money right now.
You're like,
Sorry.
you're
The
like,
point is,
sorry,
I'm triggered.
possibly.
The point is, debt is cheaper than equity. Preferred equity is more expensive than common equity, pari passu equity. Your own dollars in your pocket are more expensive than other people's dollars to you, right? And then their dollars are more expensive to them than your dollars are to you. The point of the matter is, if someone is, let's say, here's an example. I'll use one example. Let's say someone is leasing from us and we're getting a 20% cash on cash. I don't think there's a single person in the world who's going to say 20% cash on cash is not a good deal, right? It's a good deal in real estate. Asterisk. But if we look at what does the
Yeah, great deal.
asterisk say at the bottom, it
In
says
real
in
estate,
real
great.
estate. When we're talking about any real estate investment or deal, from our perspective, when I'm investing my money into something, that is IRR, meaning an annualized return based on a percentage. How many percentage points is it going to take? How many years is it going to take for me to get all my money back and then just be cash flowing the thing? So if you're at 20%, then that's going to take 5 years, right? 20, 40, 60, 80, 100 to get your money back. In other businesses, see, I can do math. In other businesses, that's not necessarily true. for example, the cannabis business or in logistics or in tech, it doesn't matter. They're not going based on IRR or an annualized cash flow return. They're going based on X multiples, meaning you can get your money back in a year's time. Oh, that sounds so great. Dimitri, how are you going to do it? Well, you're going to take crazy risks. That's how you're going to do it. You're going to take risks that you're not taking in real estate, and you deserve to get those rewards. Capitalism. That's what it's all about. So what I'm saying is, consider that for a moment. Let's say the lease we're getting 20% on our money every year. Yeah. But the person who's leasing from us has to pay their investors 100% a year. Right? Well, which investors are getting paid more? Our investors who are getting 20%, or his investors who are getting 100%? Well, his equity is more expensive. So if he had to raise more equity to buy the building as opposed to leasing from us, he would actually be paying, per his own terms, more money. Make sense? It's a matter of he's actually saving money. Now, that being said, we're not taking the risks that this particular operator's taking in this hypothetical example, because we own real estate. So of course we're getting a good return, but if something happens to that guy, let's say he gets hit by a bus tomorrow or whatever, doesn't matter what situation happens. Let's say something happens to that business, we can release to somebody else. If something happens to his business, he loses all his money because, well, that's what happens in business without proper security, right? So it makes sense for him to lease, and it makes sense for us to lease to him because it's good for us and it's good for him. It's mutually beneficial partnerships. I kind of went on a little tangent, but you guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it's all about. Relationships and networking. And I've been looking over here at my notes as well, and it's awesome because we decided we want to do this podcast about, at its core, investment, smart investment. Like, let's help people invest intelligently. Like, let's give them knowledge that will help them in the investment world. And just through this conversation, I've got a structure for the rest of the podcast, because it's like, we discovered risk assessment in our first podcast. For those of you guys just listening for the first time, go back, check out our old podcast. Sorry. We have covered risk already. Defining region is what we're kind of talking about now. And these are all parts of smart investing, like how to invest intelligently. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier. You haven't got to be super intelligent to invest in a super intelligent way. You just need to know how to make a plan overall, create a structure, define it, that it requires defining a region, which we're covering, combining your knowledge and networking. So let's do a podcast on networking. It involves assessing risk, which we've already touched on, making a plan and structure. I would love to do a podcast on structure and talk about creative structures, especially with Dimitri's creative structuring mind. Like, that would be, prepare for that one to be 2 hours, guys. But the structure podcast would be a great one. How to seek the opportunity, like finding opportunity specifically in your defined regions. And then valuations, because now you have to align values. What do I say? That's a steal. And the guy selling it is like, I'm, robbing this guy. Like, where do we get the valuation? How do we determine that and know that, we're correct over what they're wanting, and know to ask less or push for, more of a discount off the bat, because deals are made right up front. You make your money on the deal. You don't. People think, oh, when I sell, that's when I make my money. Well, if you got into it at the wrong price, you're never going to have that moment. So that's where people go over creative deals and deal flows, creative closing scenarios. I mean, all of that leads up to investing smartly. So yeah. I'm excited because it's been pressure, honestly, for me, guys, and just being completely out there with you guys. It's been like a pressure on me thinking of what we could kind of give the podcast listening world that is of value. Like, I want to create, a podcast that's not only just fun to listen to, but there's a value in it. People learning things that they see value in learning, So this is exciting for me. I'm glad we've had this specific conversation because I can see a lot of value in just having these conversations.
I'll say this. When it comes to value, we've done many things over the years. We've talked to so many people over the years about, look, we're very busy people, obviously. We joke around about, oh, hey, let's drink some scotch and talk about, different topics. But at the end of the day, we're extremely busy people all the time because we like doing what we do and it's fun, but we want, a lot of people ask me, and you guys know, I like to speak in anecdote, so I'll give another anecdote. A lot of people ask me, well, Dimitri, why do you share your expertise? Because really, everything that we're talking about is what we do. So why do we share it with others? Because here's the thing. Pro tip. Here, join me. Come here. Secret. It's a secret. Here, I'll tell you.
Huddle up.
You want to know the secret? Most people are just going to drop out. The point is, most people, I've talked to, again, 10,000 people? More than that? I don't know. I've talked to lots of people. Guess what? The majority of people that want to do what we do end up going, but it's hard and I don't like it. And oh man, what do I do? It's a lot of work. Yes, it is.
It is. That's why we get paid. Because it is not the easy.
No, the point
goes into it.
The point is, yes, there's a lot that goes into it. But that's with anything in life. If you want to learn how to play an instrument, it takes a lot of work. If you want to learn how to be a good artist, it takes a lot of work. If you want to be a good investor, it takes a lot of work. Surprise! It takes a lot of work to do anything. Yeah. If you want to go and
even if you want to put your money with someone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if you want to put your money with someone that's done a lot of work, you're going to have to do some work to find out which of those people out there that have done a lot of work you want to put your money with. Like, there's nothing I feel like that leads to good, awesome stuff without a little work somewhere, at least. Like something, even if it's like someone's giving you a gift, guess what? You're burning calories reaching out for it and opening it. Like it's that there's always some work involved. And I think all of us are looking for least amount of work, most amount of reward. And that's where strategy comes into play. And
that's where
I'm super excited to do a strategy podcast.
Well, when we do the strategy podcast, maybe I'll give out some of my tips on Monopoly strategy.
Yes.
You can take that back to your families and really piss them off.
That would be
awesome. Yes. The point is, we should definitely
annihilate
on
them
strategy
in good fun. Yeah.
And networking. I mean, look, I tell people
exactly.
You got to get out there, and let's do one question to wrap up this one, because I feel like we've really talked about the regional recessions and the structuring and what is opportunity. Here's my question to you guys: and then I'll go last. So we'll go me and then Hunter, or sorry, not me. Brian and then Hunter and then me. And here's the question of the day. Here, are you guys ready? Are you guys ready for the question of the day? I'm just kidding. Here's the question of the day. Opportunity zones are a big thing right now. So people are talking about opportunity zones, which are designated census tracts where there's deferred taxes for a period of time, roughly defined. And there's a lot of these opportunity zone funds that are being set up. Obviously, there's a lot of benefit to investing in something that's tax deferred, right? The risk that can happen is, well, if you invest in something that's bad and it's not making lots of money, then there's nothing to tax defer, right? What do you guys think will happen to some of these opportunity zone funds should there be a recession nationwide in the next several years? What do you guys think of that? Brian?
I don't know.
Do you think that they'll do inherently well, or do you think that it's possible for a tax deferred structure like an opportunity zone fund to recover from buying at a market high?
Oh, if you bought before the recession.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you should make
because right now we're
based on any tax benefits. Unless
Sorry, what was that?
I don't think you should make any decision, any long-term decision based on tax benefits. If it's, oh, I'm going to buy a Tesla now because, I'm going to be able to get a cash rebate this year, great. But that's another institution to rely on. There's so many unknowns for that. Like, do you know if taxes are going to cost the same, in a few years? Do you know what the economic situation is going to be in a few years? It's just fundamentally, it's not something I'm comfortable with. So I wouldn't recommend it on anybody, because governments, we don't know what the government situation is going to be like. We don't know what the tax situation is going to be like. All they did was give a promise, right? But that promise is essentially, in 10 years, it's going to be tax deferred. That's the only promise. So what's 10 years worth of taxes, right? If you went into an opportunity zone, not as an investment, but just as a place to park, if you did it specifically just because you wanted to, park some money to tax defer that money, and not specifically for the investment that opportunity zone will give you, then great. But it doesn't make any sense to me to essentially base your long-term decision on somebody else's promise, because that's one less point of control that you have. Yeah. But it depends on what you're comfortable with, and if you're okay with going, I trust this government, and I trust that taxes are going to be, at this level later on, and they're going to defer any risk that I might face between now and then, then great. But
capital gains does change.
Capital gains does change, but it's just fundamentally the deal itself has to be good, like irrespective of whether or not it's an opportunity zone or not. That's just a bonus. Like it's a nice to have, but unless you've set it up so that you're actually confident about the deal itself, then all of these are just sweeteners. This is all artificial.
Yeah. Hunter?
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that Brian said. Unless your only goal is just to defer, then you can for sure achieve that. It's like you can't not achieve that with an opportunity zone fund, especially. But it would make most sense if you actually want to make money off of the money, which I call that money soldier money, by the way,
Soldier
because
money.
I send out my soldier money, and its job is not to kill, but to take prisoners. It's to find other money and then take it prisoner and bring it back to me. Like that is soldier money. Go out, get as many prisoners as you can, and bring them back to camp. So I mean, I feel like idle money is losing money as well. If I'm sitting money somewhere, like I have money in a savings account or somewhere, if it's sitting in a savings account, oh, you're getting that huge interest rate from the bank. I mean, it's like just nothing. And I feel like based on the rate of inflation outpacing that rate considerably, you're losing money. You're at least losing the spending power of that money. And that could be another podcast right there, time value of money, because a lot of people don't understand how to do time value of money, and that's crucial, especially if you expect to live beyond 33. If you're not living the Belushi lifestyle, you have to think of the time value of money. And I think that also segues perfectly into the question at hand, which is uh, I feel personally, by all means, this is not investment advice, uh, but I feel personally that in the next few years, we are going to have a bubble burst. God knows there's plenty to choose from, whether it's the housing bubble, the car debt bubble, the educational debt bubble, uh, multiple bubbles potential. There's inflationary stuff going on, potential of hyperinflation type stuff happening. But I feel like in 10 years' time, whatever is we're headed imminently for will have happened. And based on, now this only goes for America, and I can only speak for America because currently we're only investing in America, and we're talking about qualified opportunity zones, and quases are only in America officially as a structure. So in America, our can-do attitude as a country, as a people over hundreds of years, if you look at the region in a macro way, the US has that ability to just fight no matter what. And I feel like in the next 10 years, when you're looking to, you know, achieve some kind of return, I feel like whatever bubble is going to pop will have popped, and the American resilience will have kicked in. But whether that resilience will have gotten us to a place equivalent to where we are now at a height in 10 years, I'm not sure. 15, I would say absolutely. We will have recovered and surpassed where we're at now. 10 years, to me, there's a risk in that because I just don't feel confident that that recovery level will have surpassed the current high.
So that being said, I'll give my 2 cents, and I agree with both of you on that. Surprise, surprise. I think, look, obvious. I was talking to a buddy of mine yesterday. There's a big conference that we went to here in Dana Point. I'll plug this one because it's a good one. IMN conference. I as in igloo, M as in mother, N as in Nancy. In any case, great conference. And I was talking to a buddy of mine, and we were talking about opportunity zones. And I, in fact, said exactly what Brian said. I said, well, look, if it's not a good deal, then I don't care if it's in a qualified opportunity zone, because look, you know what the best way to get a tax write-off is? To lose all your money in a deal. That's a 100% tax write-off, guys. You put in $1 million, you lost $1 million.
Guaranteed write-off.
Yeah. I don't want more of those types of write-offs. Now that being said, qualified opportunity zones, great thing. And I actually talked about it a little bit last week. And I would love to even do a whole thing on just qualified opportunity zones. There's a lot of value. That being said, My biggest concern, the reason I brought up the question, is exactly what, or very similar to what Hunter said. Look, if you invest today, we've surpassed, it's no question, this isn't a topic of debate. We have surpassed previous market highs. In fact, we're in the longest bull run of historically, any run up in our economy, the U.S. economy. It's true, longest bull run, which is great. I love it. How long is it going to last? Can it last indefinitely? No. Eventually it will hit. That's just life. There's the ups and the downs. And I'm not a guru talking about it. It's just, that's what will happen. And I'm also not a doomsday guy. We can't possibly predict when that will happen. By most people's predictions, it should have already happened. But, things are going well, and there's been things that have offset it. In regards to the qualified opportunity zones, let's say I buy something that's worth $5 million today in a qualified opportunity zone. Fantastic. But then next year, the economy goes to crap, and the business that's in that piece of real estate, let's say, goes out of business or downsizes. And you have to renegotiate a lease because they can't sustain that. So now your cash flow has dropped, let's say, in half, just for simplicity's sake. Or the value of your building went from 5 million to 2.5. Is it going to recover in time to be enough of a profit to justify investing in it in the first place, even with the tax deferred benefits? Maybe not. Maybe so. Because it's not like a recession hits and then, okay, start the clock from there. No. 2008 hit, and then 2011 was the bottom. Not 2008. 2008 was the start. 2011 was the bottom. And then it started going up, and now we're in 2019, and it's still going up. When's it going to stop? Well, if you find a crystal ball, you let me know. But the point is, I think there's a lot of risk. It's about a good deal. Can it weather a recession? Is there margin for error? And can you live through it, regardless of whether it's a qualified opportunity zone? So, all right, guys, this has been, I
Never
think,
invest money you can't afford to lose. That's
exactly.
Sure.
Never invest money you can't afford to lose. And then structure it in a way that you don't lose it. Okay. So I'm going to do a sign off. I hope everybody enjoyed this. This is Dimitri. We have Brian Arandez. We have Hunter Slay. We have Scotch in hand. This
Not
is
anymore.
Scotch money. Well, yeah, me neither. This has been Scotch
Scotch
money.
in belly. I'll drink for
Scotch
both of you
belly.
guys because that's what partners do. Partners
Yes.
come through when they need to. I will drink Scotch for both of you guys. Love you to death.
Are
enjoyed it today.
the bomb. Thebomb.com. Okay. This has been Scotch Money. We hope that you guys have had a very enjoyable experience and that we have taught you a thing or two. If anybody has any questions, please let us know. If you have a like button, like it. If you have a subscribe button, smash it. Smash it now. Smash. Subscribe, smash, like. And if you do, let us know a question that you have, and we're happy to answer it. We have a bunch of things to talk about, but as you guys can tell, we love talking. Peace.